My journey to learn English. My name is Adam, and I am an English student. This is my story, and I want to share my life in London with you. I also want to tell you about my amazing teacher. I hope you can read my story and learn English with me. Lesson 1, Going to London. It is a beautiful summer day. The sun is shining, and I am traveling to London by train. As I sit quietly, I notice two ladies sitting across from me. I don't know them, but I can hear their conversation. From the way they talk, I can tell they are foreigners. They are speaking English, but I don't understand much of what they are saying. I really want to speak English too, but I am just a beginner. I know only a few words. Even so, I see this as a chance to practice. I decide to try speaking to them. Nervously, I say a few simple sentences in my basic English. To my surprise, they understand me. I speak slowly, searching for the right words, but the ladies are kind and patient. They listen carefully and smile as I try. We manage to have a small conversation. I tell them that I want to learn English. When they hear this, they seem happy. They tell me they are from England and are traveling home after attending a conference. We talk for about 10 minutes. Soon, my stop arrives. As I gather my things and thank them for talking to me, something wonderful happens. The ladies give me their address and phone number. They tell me I can visit them in England if I want to. I feel grateful and excited. We say goodbye, and I step off the train with a smile on my face. This is how my journey of learning English begins. After that meeting, I feel even more motivated to improve. I start translating texts and watching English movies. Every day, I spend about 2 hours practicing. 6 months later, I can speak English quite well. I feel proud, but I know I still want to learn more. This is just the beginning of my adventure. My first day at English school in London, I decide to go to London to study English. I choose a school that I believe will be good for me. I feel excited and can't wait for my first lesson. The class is on Monday, and I look forward to it all weekend. On my first day at school, I meet my teacher and the other students. My teacher is a young lady with a warm smile. She seems very nice and friendly. She asks everyone to introduce themselves and say where they are from. I listen carefully as my classmates speak, and then it's my turn. After introductions, the lesson begins. Our teacher asks how we have studied English before and what we think is the best way to learn. I tell her that I like translating songs and other texts. But I'm not sure what the best method really is. The teacher smiles and says she will teach us a very effective method, one that focuses on using the language. She surprises us by saying we won't have to study the way we usually do, and we won't use textbooks. Instead, we will immerse ourselves in the language. I feel relieved because I don't enjoy studying or working with textbooks. This method sounds perfect for me. Next, we discuss what we should focus on when learning a new language. Our teacher explains that languages are for communication. They help us share ideas and understand others. The best way to learn a language, she says, is by using it to exchange ideas. In this course, we will speak a lot. The teacher reminds us that as children, we learned our native language by speaking, not by memorizing rules or words. It should be the same when learning English as adults. She also mentions that many students spend too much time memorizing vocabulary or studying grammar. But the truth is, speaking and practicing are the keys to success. I leave the class feeling excited and hopeful. This way of learning feels right, and I can't wait to continue. Learning English the fun way. Many students don't use English to speak, they study the language, but they rarely practice it. Our teacher explains that while it's important to learn new words and grammar, we don't need to focus too much on memorizing them. She smiles and says, "During this course, I will show you a simple and effective way to learn new words and grammar." I like the sound of that. The lesson continues, and we start talking about our hobbies and what we do in our free time. We speak in pairs or directly with our teacher. The best part is, we speak for the entire lesson. I can't believe how much I enjoy it. I have never spoken so much English in one class before. This method feels new to me, but I'm happy. I leave the classroom feeling excited and can't wait for the next lesson. Lesson 2, How to Learn New Words. On Tuesday, I return to school for another lesson. One of the students asks a question I find interesting. She asks, "What is the best way to learn new words?" Our teacher nods and says, "There are many ways to learn new words, but I will tell you what studies show is the most effective: reading." She explains that people who read when learning a new language improve twice as fast as those who don't. It's a good habit to read for at least 30 minutes every day, she adds. Then, the teacher gives us an important tip. If you want to get the most out of reading, choose something you enjoy. Pick a book, story, or article that interests you. It could be a fun story, useful information for your job, or something related to your hobbies. But don't read something boring, it won't help. I realize how simple and enjoyable learning English can be. I'm excited to find books I like and start reading every day, learning English and finding a job. Our teacher continues to give us helpful advice about learning English. She explains that when reading, it's best to choose texts where we already know most of the words. If you try to read something with too many new words, you might feel frustrated, she says. The goal is to enjoy what you're doing in English. I understand this well. It's important to choose reading materials that are interesting and at the right level for me, the teacher adds. When you find a word you don't know, just grab a dictionary and look it up. After that, keep reading. You don't need to write the word down or make a list. You don't even have to try to remember it immediately. Focus on understanding the text first. Once the meaning is clear, move on. If you find another new word, do the same thing. I like how simple this method is, she continues. Reading has another great benefit. Not only do you learn new words, but you also see how words connect in sentences. You naturally learn how to link them together. This way of learning is very effective. Try it, and you'll see how quickly you improve. I feel motivated to start reading more. After this, the lesson shifts to a new topic: the job market in England and the best jobs for students. This interests me because I want to find a job after class. When the lesson ends, I ask some classmates if they know where I can apply for work. They suggest visiting a job center. This sounds like a good idea, I think. Later that day, I visit the job center. I'm not sure what kind of jobs I can apply for, so I ask the woman at the front desk, what jobs are best for students like me. She smiles and says, "We have a few good options for students." Hearing this makes me feel hopeful. Now, I'm not only improving my English but also taking steps to find a job. I feel like I'm moving forward in my life. Finding a job and learning pronunciation. The lady at the job center smiles and tells me about 2 job options. I can work as a cleaner or as a waiter in a cafe. I hesitate for a moment and say, I don't have any experience with these jobs. She reassures me, your English is good enough to work at the cafe. The training isn't hard, and you'll have more chances to speak English there than as a cleaner. Hearing this makes me feel better. She then tells me I can start working on Thursday. I leave the job center feeling happy. Not only do I have a job, but I also get to practice English while working. The teacher's advice echoes in my head: read for 30 minutes every day to learn new words. I feel like I'm improving little by little. Lesson 3, How to Learn Pronunciation. On Wednesday, I return to school for another class. There is one student in our group who is quieter than the rest. He is from South Korea. During the lesson, our teacher asks if we have any questions. The student from Korea raises his hand. He looks a little nervous but speaks up. I have a problem with pronunciation, he says softly. I know my pronunciation isn't very good, and I don't know how to improve it. I don't speak much because I don't want others to hear my bad pronunciation. I read and watch a lot of English films, and I understand well, but I want to speak better. What can I do to improve? I notice how serious he looks. I feel like I can relate to him. Speaking in a new language can be scary. The teacher smiles kindly. I'm glad you asked, she says. Let me tell you something about pronunciation and how to practice it. I'll also teach you a great technique that can help everyone improve. We all listen carefully as she continues. The first thing to understand, she says, is that pronunciation is physical. When we speak, we move our mouths and use the muscles there. Just like exercising your body, you need to exercise the muscles in your mouth to improve pronunciation. This makes sense to me. I've never thought about speaking in this way before. I feel excited to learn more. If practicing pronunciation is like training a muscle, then maybe, with time and effort, I can become better too. Improving pronunciation with shadowing. Our teacher continues explaining why pronunciation can be difficult for students learning English. The problem, she says, is that when you speak English, you often move your mouth the same way you would in your native language. This can make your pronunciation sound different from that of native speakers. I nod. This makes sense to me, she adds. This happens to almost everyone learning a new language. Most students have slightly different pronunciation. But that's okay. People can usually understand you, even if your pronunciation isn't perfect. I feel relieved hearing this, but, she continues, if you want to improve, there's a great technique that can help a lot. It's called shadowing. I sit up straighter, curious to learn more. The shadowing technique is very simple. All you do is copy the sounds you hear immediately after hearing them, the teacher explains. She smiles and says, think about how children learn their first language. They copy their parents over and over until their pronunciation is perfect. You can do the same thing with English. I love the idea. It feels natural and easy to understand. Our teacher explains how to practice shadowing. Find a video or audio recording that is not too fast and that you understand well. Listen to it and repeat what you hear, copying the speaker as closely as possible. That's all you need to do. I imagine myself practicing at home with videos or podcasts. The teacher adds, shadowing is also helpful when you need to prepare for a presentation in English. If you want your pronunciation to sound more like a native speaker, try shadowing for about 10 minutes before the presentation. Find a quiet place where you can be alone and practice. This sounds like a fun and useful way to improve. I decide I will try shadowing later that evening. I leave the class feeling excited to work on my pronunciation, making friends, and practicing speaking. Our teacher continues, if you try shadowing, you'll see how much it helps your pronunciation, especially during a presentation. I find this very interesting. I've never heard of shadowing before, but it sounds like something I really want to try. After the lesson ends, I head to the school reception. I feel like doing something active, so I ask the lady at the front desk, "Are there any sports activities at school? I'd love to play some sports while I'm in England." She smiles and says, "Yes. We have a table tennis team and a football team. The football team is training today at 5 o'clock. Hearing this makes me so happy. Sports have always been a big part of my life. At 5 o'clock, I go to football training and meet many players from different countries: Brazil, Japan, Russia, Spain, Argentina, and Italy. The practice is fun, and I feel like I belong. It's a great way to relax, meet new people, and use English in a natural way. I leave training feeling grateful. My time in England is starting off well. I have a wonderful teacher, new friends from football, and tomorrow, I start my new job. Lesson 4, How to Practice Speaking. On Thursday, I return to school for another lesson. There's a new student in class. Her name is Monica, and she's from Italy. At the beginning of the lesson, our teacher smiles and says, "Welcome back, Monica. How is life?" It turns out that my teacher already knows Monica. She explains to the class, "Monica was in my beginner class a year ago. It was a short course during the summer holidays, just for 2 weeks. When Monica speaks, her English surprises me. Her pronunciation is beautiful, and she speaks fluently and confidently." The teacher beams with pride and asks, "Monica, where did you learn to speak English so well? You're so fluent. What school did you go to?" Monica laughs softly and says, "I didn't go to any school. I learned English at home." The whole class looks at her with surprise. I feel curious and can't wait to hear more about how she learned on her own. Learning to think aloud, Monica smiles as she explains, "I used the advice and techniques you taught us last summer. I did a lot of reading, shadowing, and thinking aloud. I try to think more in English than in Italian. That's how I improved my English. The 2 weeks I spent in your class last summer helped me so much. You showed me exactly how to work on my English every day. That's why I wanted to come back. A year ago, I was a beginner, and now I can speak English. I want to learn from you again." Our teacher's face lights up with happiness. "Thank you for sharing that, Monica," she says warmly. I listen carefully, fascinated by what Monica said. I already know how important reading is. I've learned about shadowing, too. But this is the first time I've heard someone talk about thinking aloud. Curious, I raise my hand. "Teacher, what is thinking aloud?" I ask. She smiles knowingly. "It's a simple but powerful technique," she says. "But you need strong motivation to learn English if you want to benefit from it. I should also warn you, some people find this technique a little strange." I lean forward in my chair, eager to learn more. "I don't mind if it sounds crazy," I say. "If it helps me improve my English, I want to try it. Can you teach us?" The teacher nods. "Of course. It's actually very simple. You know how you usually think in your native language all day long? Well, now you're going to start thinking in English instead." I nod along. "When you're used to thinking in English, you can take it one step further, think out loud," she explains. "It means saying your thoughts aloud, just like you're having a conversation with yourself. The idea feels a little funny, but I can already see how it might help. Speaking aloud, even to myself, might give me more confidence and help my pronunciation. I decide I'm going to try thinking aloud as soon as I get home. If it worked for Monica, maybe it can work for me too. The power of thinking aloud. I sit back and think for a moment. It sounds simple, I say. But you mentioned it's a powerful technique. Why is it so powerful? Our teacher smiles and gestures toward Monica. Maybe you should ask Monica. She's been using this technique for a year now. I'm sure she can tell us what she's discovered. The class turns to Monica, and the teacher asks, "Would you mind sharing your experience with thinking aloud?" Monica nods easily. Of course. I'm happy to share, she says with a warm smile. She begins, "When I first started with this technique, it wasn't easy at all. I began with very simple sentences, things like, 'I can speak English. It is good that I can speak English. I want to be better. I need to practice every day.' I listen closely, imagining myself saying these simple sentences." Monica continues, "I didn't know many words, but I told myself, I can use the words I do know. I can express my ideas with them. I can do this. This is great." I smile at how encouraging she sounds. The sentences were simple, she says, but I realized something important. In Italian, my thoughts were long and complicated. When I tried to say the same things in English, I couldn't. I had to find a way to simplify my thoughts. She pauses for a moment. Thinking in simple English was the hardest part at first. But after some time, it became normal for me. I didn't have to force it anymore, I was just thinking in English naturally. I nod. This makes sense. Then, Monica adds, her eyes brightening, something interesting happened. I met a man from Australia while he was on holiday in Italy. I was still a beginner, but we started speaking in English. The class listens closely. I noticed something surprising, Monica says. Even though my sentences were short and simple, I could speak with him without many problems. I didn't have to stop and translate every thought from Italian to English in my head, I could just speak. Hearing this gives me hope. Monica smiles and finishes by saying, "It wasn't perfect, but because I had practiced these simple sentences over and over, they came naturally to me. That's why I believe thinking aloud is so powerful." I feel inspired. If Monica could do it, maybe I can too. Learning grammar through experience. I listen carefully as Monica finishes her story. "Thinking aloud helped me so much," she says. "It improved how I express my ideas, and I still use it every day. It really is a powerful technique." Our teacher smiles and thanks Monica for sharing her experience. As I sit there, I feel inspired. I'm going to try thinking aloud, I decide. I want to improve my speaking, just like Monica did. Lesson 5, How to Learn Grammar. After school, I head to the cafe where my job training is about to start. I feel a little nervous because I don't know what to expect. I've never worked at a cafe before. And I'm not sure if I can do it. When I arrive, I'm surprised. The cafe is modern and cozy, with the smell of fresh coffee and chocolate cake in the air. It sells coffee, tea, cakes, and sandwiches. My biggest surprise is my boss. She's only 25 years old. But she already has more than 2 years of experience working here. She knows everything perfectly. She smiles and starts to show me around. "This is how you prepare coffee," she says. And this is how you wash the dishes. Here's how you handle customers. I try my best to follow along, but there's so much information. I probably remember only 20% of what she tells me. Luckily, she's patient. After explaining, she lets me try the work myself. When I make mistakes, she gently corrects me. I'm relieved because she's so friendly, and I feel like I'm learning fast. By the end of the day, I'm exhausted. I had to take in a lot of new information, and my feet are sore. But I feel proud. I have a job, and I'm learning something new. The next day, back to school. On Friday, I return to school. During the lesson, one of the students raises his hand and asks a question that immediately grabs my attention. Sometimes, when I speak, he says, "I'm not sure if I'm using the correct grammar. Can you help me? What should I do if I want to improve my grammar?" The teacher smiles and nods. "That's a great question," she says. Learning grammar for speaking in exams. The classroom is quiet as everyone listens carefully to the question about grammar. I sit up straight, eager to hear the teacher's answer. There are two types of students when it comes to learning English. The teacher begins. Some students want to speak English fluently, and others need to pass an exam. Each group needs a different approach. She pauses for a moment and then continues. Let's start with those of you who want to speak English. If speaking is your goal, you don't need to focus too much on grammar. Think about how you learned your native language. You didn't study grammar textbooks as a child, did you? The class shakes their heads. Exactly, she says with a smile. You learned naturally by listening, speaking, and reading. English can be learned the same way. The best way to absorb grammar is by reading a lot. Books are written with correct grammar, so as you read, you will pick it up in context without even realizing it. I nod to myself. This makes sense. I also recommend shadowing, she adds. When you shadow, you copy correct sentences immediately after hearing them. This helps you practice grammar naturally. There's no need to memorize rules, you're simply repeating well-formed sentences. I write this down in my notebook. Shadowing is really useful for so many things. Then the teacher shifts her focus. Now, for those of you who need to pass an exam, the approach is different. You do need to study grammar more carefully. Some students sigh softly. The teacher laughs. I know it's not as fun, but there's a way to make it easier. If possible, get practice exams from previous years. Even though the questions will be different, the structure is often similar. Practicing with these materials will help you understand the format and what to expect. She looks around the room. I recommend taking the real exam only when your practice results show that you're ready to pass. This way, you'll feel more confident. One of the students raises his hand again. Yes, that answers my question. Thank you. The teacher nods warmly. I'm glad to hear that. Remember, no matter your goal, speaking fluently or passing an exam, there's a path that works for you. I feel encouraged as I close my notebook at the end of the lesson. I can do this. I just need to stay consistent and follow the right steps, testing your English and improving pronunciation. It's Monday again, and I head to school feeling more confident than ever. As the lesson begins, our teacher asks us to share what we did over the weekend. I raise my hand. On Saturday, I worked at the cafe. I'm starting to feel more comfortable with my tasks, and I really enjoy speaking to the customers. As I finish speaking, one of the girls in the class tilts her head. Wait a second, she says. Your voice sounds different. Your pronunciation is much better than last week. I can't help but smile. Thank you, I reply. I tried shadowing after work on Saturday and all day Sunday. I wanted to sound more like a native speaker. I know I'm not perfect yet, but I can hear the difference too. The teacher looks impressed. That's wonderful progress, she says. Has anyone else tried shadowing? 3 hands go up, including the quiet student from South Korea. He nods shyly, clearly liking the technique as well. One of the girls lowers her hand with a small laugh. I tried it, she says. But after 5 minutes, my mouth actually hurt. I didn't expect it to be so tiring. Also, sometimes I couldn't keep up with the recording. It was just too fast. The teacher nods understandingly. That's completely normal, she says. Shadowing can feel strange at first. Your mouth muscles aren't used to moving in the same way as native speakers. It's almost like exercise, the more you do it, the easier it becomes. Don't worry if you can't follow everything perfectly. Focus on repeating what you can catch. I feel relieved hearing this. I also struggled at times to keep up, but I'm glad to know that's part of the process. The teacher adds, remember, improvement doesn't happen overnight. But with consistency, you'll notice big changes. The key is to keep practicing, even if it's just for a few minutes every day. As the lesson continues, I feel motivated to keep going. Shadowing really works, and if I stay patient, my pronunciation will only get better. Handling mistakes in English. After discussing shadowing and its benefits, our teacher thanks us for trying out the technique. She encourages us, saying, if your mouth hurts after 5 minutes, that's a good sign. It means you're using muscles in a way they aren't used to. Think of it like working out at the gym. Your muscles will hurt at first, but over time, they'll get stronger. She continues, you don't have to push through the pain. You can take breaks and return to it later. The key is consistency. With every 5 minutes, you should notice a slight improvement in your pronunciation. Our teacher explains that shadowing doesn't just help with pronunciation. It also improves your intonation, rhythm, and the way you connect words in a sentence. In the beginning, you might struggle to keep up with the recording, she says. If that happens, just repeat the first or last word of the sentence. With practice, you'll get faster and more accurate. I nod, agreeing with her. I remember how hard it was for me on Saturday, but by Sunday evening, shadowing had already become easier. Next, our teacher surprises us with a question. How many words do you think you know in English? She asks. Everyone falls silent. We all know we're intermediate students, but none of us really know how many words we've learned. Curious, I decide to take the test right away. When the results come in, I find out I know 2,100 words. Most of the other students know between 2,000 and 2,200 words. But Monica and the boy from South Korea stand out. They know 2,500 words each. It's interesting to see the different levels of vocabulary, but it also shows me that there's always room for improvement. Even if I don't know as many words as some others, I know that with continued practice, I'll get there. As the lesson progresses, I'm reminded that learning a language is a process, and mistakes are a part of it. And when I make mistakes, I'll embrace them as part of my journey toward becoming fluent. Embracing mistakes in language learning. On Tuesday, we gather at school for our lesson. One student raises an interesting question. I want to practice speaking with people around me, but I'm afraid of making mistakes. I don't want to look stupid. Can you help me? Our teacher smiles and responds, making mistakes is a very important topic. There are many opinions about it, but I want to share what I believe is the best approach. She continues, I have a lot of experience with this. I've learned several languages myself, and I'm still learning Spanish. When I speak Spanish, I don't worry about making mistakes. The reason I don't care is simple. When I learned my native language, I didn't care about making mistakes either. My goal then was simply to express my ideas, and it's the same now. That's all that matters. The teacher shares, I know that as I read a lot, speak, and practice shadowing, my Spanish will get better. It might sound simple, but after many years of teaching and learning languages, this approach works well for me and for many of my students. She adds, when I speak, I only focus on speaking at that moment. Right now, I know about 1,500 words in Spanish, which is about the level of a 2-year-old. 2-year-olds make many mistakes when speaking, but they don't care. They just keep talking. By the time they're 3, they make fewer mistakes, and by 4, they speak much better. Our teacher tells us, you should approach language learning the same way. Most of you know around 2,000 words, so it's completely normal to make mistakes from time to time. This perspective is comforting. I realize that mistakes are not a sign of failure but an essential part of the learning process. As long as I keep speaking and practicing, my language skills will continue to improve. The importance of mistakes in language learning. As we continue using English, we notice that our mistakes become fewer and fewer. It's clear now that it's impossible to improve without making mistakes. When practicing English, it's okay not to be perfect. Perfection comes with time and practice. Our teacher reminds us that everyone starts at the same point. Anyone who began learning English started from level 0. Learning a language is like learning to play a musical instrument. It requires training. At first, it's not perfect, and mistakes are normal. Take these mistakes as a necessary part of the learning process. Without going through this stage of making mistakes, you can't reach higher levels. She explains further, by continuing to practice, you gradually eliminate mistakes. If you want to make fewer mistakes, read and shadow a lot. When you read aloud, it helps you make fewer mistakes in real conversations. The teacher emphasizes, don't focus on being perfect when speaking. Focus only on exchanging ideas. Don't worry about mistakes, those will happen. Everyone who learns a new language makes mistakes from time to time, even famous people, business leaders, or politicians. When you hear them speak on TV, you'll notice they don't worry about mistakes. They care about what's important, expressing their ideas. This reassures me that mistakes aren't something to fear, they are simply part of the learning journey. The more I practice, the fewer mistakes I'll make, and the better I'll become at communicating my thoughts in English. How to remember words. On Wednesday, I go to school again. At the start of the lesson, one student raises an interesting concern. I've started reading more, and I can see how my grammar is improving, but I have a problem. When I read, I often look up a new word in a dictionary, but then, just 10 minutes later, I forget the word and have to look it up again. How can I remember words better? Our teacher smiles and says, that's a great question, and it's absolutely normal. In fact, usually, you'll need to look up a word 5 times before you remember it. Some words, especially verbs, might need to be looked up 10 or 15 times. But don't worry, this is part of the process, she continues. When you learn a new word, it goes through different phases. Only once you go through all these phases will you truly remember it. There are 5 phases to remember. 1. First phase, you see a new word for the first time, and you don't know what it means. You look it up in the dictionary. 2. Second phase, you encounter the word again, either in reading or conversation, and recognize that you've seen it before. However, you still can't remember its meaning, so you look it up again. 3. Third phase, you encounter the word again, and you have a vague sense of its meaning. For example, you might know it's an object, an animal, or a verb, but you're not completely sure what it means. 4. Fourth phase, now, when you see the word, you understand what it means, but you can't recall it when you want to say it. This word has moved into your passive vocabulary. 5. Fifth phase, this is the final phase, where you are able to use the word correctly in speech. Our teacher explains, as you can see, there are 5 phases. Do you now understand why it's impossible to remember a new word right after the first time you encounter it? You would need to jump across all phases in a single encounter. Instead, the word needs to be seen or heard several times, going through each phase until you reach phase 5. You should be proud not only when you perfectly remember a word but also when you move from one phase to the next. Each time this happens, you're closer to the ultimate goal, using the word naturally in everyday conversation. I find this all very interesting. I never realized there were these distinct phases. I had often felt frustrated when I looked up a word in the dictionary and 2 minutes later forgot it, only to look it up again. Now I understand that this is completely normal. It's okay to need several encounters with a word before I can use it properly. After school, I head to my football training. Our coach informs us that we will have a match on Saturday. Improving listening skills. Our teacher explains the best approach to improving listening skills. Listening is crucial for communication. If you can't understand what others are saying, it will be difficult to converse with them. There are many resources online for English learners, but choosing the right material can be a challenge. Let's break down 2 types of listening materials you can use. 1. Audio materials. When listening to audio, you should understand 95% of the words. If you don't know many of the words, it's helpful to read the text first and make sure you understand them. The goal here isn't to learn new words but to practice extracting information from spoken language. You can also use simplified English books with accompanying audio, which are excellent because they match your level of understanding. 2. Films and videos. Films are also great for listening practice, especially if you know at least 2,000 words in English. The best way to use them is, first watch, with subtitles, so you understand the context of the film. Second watch, without subtitles, to challenge yourself and see how much you can understand without support. Our teacher recommends focusing on materials that are at your level to maximize improvement in listening skills. After class, I feel confident and excited for the upcoming football match on Saturday, where I will play for the school team against another team from Cambridge. Our teacher continues to explain, if you really enjoy a film, watching it multiple times can help you understand it better with each viewing. As you rewatch a film, you'll gradually understand more of it. It's also useful to watch videos about topics that interest you, like nature documentaries or reality shows. Reality shows are often easier to follow than films because their structure tends to be more predictable. The key is to listen for at least 30 minutes a day. The more you listen, the faster you'll learn new words. In the beginning, it's normal to understand only a small portion. However, focus on what you do understand, even if it's just 10%. Celebrate every new sentence you comprehend. Listening is one of the easiest ways to learn a language because all you have to do is listen. I now feel motivated to keep improving my listening skills by incorporating 30 minutes of listening practice into my daily routine. Reflecting on your reason for learning English. On Friday, our teacher asks an interesting question: what was your first reason for learning English? Can you remember the moment when you started to learn it? When did you begin to become truly interested in the language? These questions make me reflect on my own journey with English. It's an important reminder to think about why we start learning and to reconnect with the motivations that keep us going. Our teacher says, "Thank you for sharing your story. There's something very interesting about your experience," she continues. "In the beginning, you didn't have motivation to learn English. But later, you found a motivation, understanding the songs of the Beatles. That motivation helped you succeed. This shows that motivation is crucial when learning a language. When you have it, you can keep going and improve. Without motivation, progress becomes difficult." I realize that my journey to learning English started without much interest, but the turning point came when music became my source of motivation. It's a reminder that having a reason to learn makes all the difference in overcoming challenges and making progress. At the end of the lesson, our teacher asks if we like English. I say, "I didn't like English in high school, but now I like it a lot. I can see how useful it is to know this language," our teacher explains. This is another important factor when learning a new language. It helps if you like something related to English, whether it's people, music, culture, or history. When you enjoy it, learning becomes easier. If you want to communicate in English, it's good to know 3,000 words or more. If you don't like English, it's harder to make time for practice and reach that level. I can agree with my teacher now. Not only do I like the Beatles, but I also enjoy the company of my teacher and my boss, who are both English. I also appreciate English humor. It's much easier for me to find time to practice English every day. On Saturday, I go to play football for my school team. We have some very talented players, and we win 3-2, we are all very happy. After the match, we go to the pub to celebrate our victory. When you want to learn English, you need motivation to use English every day. Lesson 11. How to learn 3,000 words. During the next lesson, one of the students asks our teacher a question. "You told us that it is good to know 3,000 words. Where can I find these 3,000 words? Which are the most important for me to learn?" Our teacher replies, "You can Google a list of the 3,000 most frequent words in English, but such a list won't help you much. When you start learning words from this list, you will learn them outside the context. You will learn words that aren't connected with any story, and you won't learn what other words are connected with these words in sentences. You will only learn them in your short-term memory. This system works only for some words, the basic words that describe things and people around us. For example, mother, father, apple, blue, orange, dog, cat, book, car, house, city, boy, girl, water, cinema, or paper. These are words that represent something you can easily imagine. For example, when you learn the word dog, you immediately know what it is. You have a clear idea in your head of what the word means, but when you want to learn words such as appreciate or suppose, this system doesn't work well. This is a problem many students experience. They start studying by using lists of words. It works at the beginning, and they believe they can learn English this way. They don't know that when they reach the level of 1,000 words, they have to start using a different system. If you want to learn words from a higher level, you have to learn them from whole sentences. If you understand the meaning of a word in the context of a sentence, you will learn it much better. You can learn words from lists, but there is usually a limit to how far you can go with this way of learning, and that limit is around 1,000 words. Also, this way of learning is very slow. There are much better methods, like the ones we've already discussed, such as reading. For beginners, the best book to read is Robinson Crusoe in Simple English. There is also one interesting rule that applies here: every word that is important to you will keep coming back into your life again and again until you learn it. This is very similar to the way we learn our own language. As children, we don't study from lists of words, we just use the language, and important words keep appearing until, one day, we know what they mean. We keep learning new words this way throughout our lives. For example, the verb Google is a new word in many languages. We learned this word by using the language. We didn't learn it from any list of words. When you first heard the word Google, you probably didn't know what it meant, but then you heard it again and again. Since the word was important to you, after some time, you understood its meaning. You can forget about lists of words. Learn new words by reading stories and other interesting texts. When you use English a lot every day, soon you will know 3,000 words. Does this make sense? Yes, says the student. Thank you. After school, I go to my work. I already know my work very well, and things start to become automatic. I'm happy that I understand my customers. It's not very difficult because the conversations are usually very similar. Our customers want some coffee or sandwiches, so the words are usually the same or very similar. My confidence grows, and sometimes I start having longer conversations with the customers. Everything is good, but then something happens that is a little bit shocking for me. Lesson 12, How to Improve Your Accent. On Tuesday, when I'm at my work, something interesting happens. Two customers come to our cafe, a husband and a wife. The man starts speaking to me. I know he's speaking English, but I don't understand him. I think he wants something we don't have, so I call my boss. She speaks with the man and sells him 2 coffees and 2 of our regular sandwiches. I am surprised. When they leave, I go to my boss and tell her that I'm sorry I didn't understand the man. She says that it's okay. She tells me that this can happen when people speak with an accent that is new to us. She tells me that the pair was from Scotland. The next day, I go to school and tell this story to my teacher. I tell her that I felt really stupid for not understanding our customer. I wasn't sure if my English was good enough for my job. I started doubting myself. My boss was okay with it, but I still needed some help from my teacher. I wanted to know what I could do in these situations. My teacher says, I understand. You are used to English spoken in London, but you're not used to the Scottish accent. Your ears aren't used to listening to Scottish English. All you have to do is listen more to Scottish English. You need to train your ears to this accent as well. What happened to you can happen to anyone. When you already speak English at some level and go to a country where people speak with a different accent, you shouldn't be surprised if you don't understand. It's okay, and it usually takes about 2 weeks to get used to this new accent. Don't think that there's something wrong with you when you don't understand. With practice, you can train your ears to any accent. Then I ask, so, what can I do to understand the Scottish accent? I don't live in Scotland, our teacher says. You can watch films with Scottish English or watch situation comedies from Scotland. Soon you'll be able to understand, I tell her. Thank you. After school, I go to my work again. At about 4 o'clock, 2 interesting customers come to our cafe. This time, they are not from Scotland, they are foreigners. They want to buy some coffee. They are 2 ladies, and it's clear that their English is very basic. My boss is serving them. When she hears that they don't speak English very well, she does something very interesting. She changes her English and uses very simple sentences with only 3 or 4 words. I can see that the ladies understand her. They buy 2 coffees, 2 sandwiches, and 2 cakes. They are happy, and my boss is happy too. When the ladies leave, I tell my boss that it was very nice how she changed her English so the 2 ladies would understand her. My boss says that sometimes she has to speak in very simple English. It doesn't matter if the customers speak English well or not. They are our customers, and we have to do everything possible to make them feel comfortable. If they know they can speak English here, they will come to our cafe every day. I think that our boss is a good businesswoman. She does everything possible to make our customers happy. It's true that we have a lot of customers. Our cafe is busy every day. Lesson 13, what you can do at your level. The next day at school, I tell my teacher about my experience with my boss and the 2 ladies who didn't speak English very well. Our teacher says, "Great, your boss must be a very clever woman. It's true that you can communicate with everybody. Even people who speak English very well can have a conversation with those who are just at the beginning of their journey." Today, we will speak about different levels of English and what you should be able to do at each level. Let's start with the lowest level, which is 1,000 words. At this level, students can speak about some basic things from everyday life. Speaking is very limited, but it is already possible to communicate slowly for a short time with people who want to speak with you. Your sentences are short, usually around 4 words. If the others also speak in short sentences, you can have a basic conversation. When students move to a higher level, around 2,000 words, the conversations become easier, and the sentences are longer. This is the level most of you in this class are at right now. You should be able to speak about many things from your life, such as your family, hobbies, job, and traveling. Sometimes, you might have a problem when you want to go into a deeper conversation on some topics. However, this level is usually sufficient enough for everyday use of English. If you want to be able to have a deeper conversation on many topics, it is good to know 3,000 words. Your goal as a student of English who wants to speak English well should be to learn 3,000 words. Of course, you can learn more than 3,000 words. The more words you know, the easier it will be for you to communicate in English, but 3,000 words is the level that is usually enough for communicating in English about almost everything. I think that the 2 ladies at your cafe knew about 1,000 words. Your boss adjusted to their level and had a basic conversation with them. After school, I go to work, and the 2 ladies come to our cafe again. They also bring 2 of their friends. It is my turn to serve them, and I speak to them in simple, short sentences. They understand me. This is great. They tell me that they are tourists from Japan and that they like our cafe because people understand them here. Lesson 14, what to do when you are shy. On Thursday, I go to school again. One student has a very interesting question. She says, "I am very shy when I have to speak English. Can you help me to overcome my shyness?" Our teacher says, it is true that when we use foreign languages, it is natural that we feel uncertain or shy when we are doing something we are not perfect at. The possibility of making a mistake is great. I was also very shy when I learned foreign languages. I remember well how I was afraid to make a mistake, and when I made a mistake, I felt stupid and sometimes I blushed. Now, it is different. I use languages for communication, and I care only about communication. You know that I am learning Spanish these days. Embarrassing situations can happen, but they can't stop me from using Spanish. It is true that sometimes I still feel shy when I have to speak Spanish, and I also sometimes blush, but I don't care much about it. It is a natural human feeling. And it never lasts forever. I continue using Spanish because I know that only by using it can I improve. I also try to see things as they are. I am a student, and I am on the way to good Spanish. It is not possible to skip several levels in one day. A beginner can't become a perfect speaker in 1 hour. I also see what I mean to people around me. When I already speak some Spanish, I have value to people who speak Spanish. You should see the same when you already speak some English. You can have a conversation with other people in English. That's great. Look at what you already know. You know 2,000 words. You have already gone from 0 to 2,000 words. Appreciate it. Some students have a feeling that to know English means to be able to speak like a native speaker. To have perfect pronunciation, perfect grammar, and just speak perfectly without any mistakes. They think that if they are not doing that, then they don't know English. They are embarrassed because they are not perfect. These students are very hard on themselves, and it is not necessary. You are great because you already speak some English. Continue working on your English, and your shyness can gradually go away. I like what our teacher tells us. I am also sometimes shy. I know that I should practice speaking a lot, but in some situations, I don't want to look stupid, and I don't speak as much as I should. I decide to be a bit more brave in these situations and use them to practice more. Then, one student says, sometimes I want to say something, but I don't know the word I want to say. Then I stop, and I don't know what to do. In these situations, I feel very stupid. The next time when I can speak English, I don't want to speak because I don't want to be in this stupid situation again. Can you help me with this? Our teacher says, when you start to speak English, you have to prepare for one thing. There will be moments when you don't know a word you want to say. In such a situation, you will need to learn how to describe the word. This ability is very important when learning a new language. Since you are not a native English speaker, you will probably never know the same amount of words as you know in your native language. I can tell you that you can describe almost every word. You only need to train this skill. You will have to train how to express ideas within the vocabulary you have. For example, you don't know how to say the word key, you can describe it as a small thing for opening a door. You also describe words in your native language without realizing it. If you don't know the word for something, you just describe it to the other person so that he or she understands what it is. You can do the same thing in English, but you need to train this ability. Thinking aloud is a very good technique to use when you want to be able to describe well. Use thinking aloud every day, and your ability to describe things will improve. Lesson 15. Who is talented? The next day is Friday, and I go to school again. I am happy that I go to this class, not only because of our teacher. I like this class because there are students from many different countries in our class. Some students are from Europe, some from South America, and there is also one student from Japan and one from South Korea in my class. This is good for me because the students don't speak my native language. When I speak to them, I have to use only English. It is very good for my practice. Today, we have another new student in our class. Her name is Sophia, and she is from Argentina. At the beginning of the lesson, Sophia says that she thinks that she doesn't have a talent for studying languages, but she wants to work hard to improve. My teacher asks her, "Why do you think that you don't have a talent?" She answers, "I think that I don't have a talent because my sister learns English very fast, but for me, it is difficult." Then our teacher asks everybody in the class, "Do you think that you have a talent for learning languages? Please put your hand up if you believe that you have a talent." I look around the class, and nobody puts their hands up. My teacher smiles. Then she says, "Now, I want to tell you something. Many people think that you need to have a talent if you really want to learn a new language. I agree, yes, you need to have a talent if you want to learn a new language. But I also believe that you already have a talent for learning languages. Why do you have a talent? You have a talent because you already learned one language, which is your native language. You were successful at learning your native language, and you speak that language fluently. All people who are able to learn their native language have a talent for learning languages. Why do many students believe that they are not talented?" she asks. The reason is this: there are people who are super talented. Yes, it is true. These super talented people remember new words very fast and for a longer time. Maybe you know these people. Maybe it is somebody at your work or in your family. There are not many of these people, but they exist. I believe that this can be Sophia's sister as well. Learning a new language is fun for these people, and they can do it easily. Sophia says, "That is true, my sister is really better than everybody else." Our teacher continues, "It is true that these super talented people exist. It is a fact, and we cannot do anything about it, and it is not a problem. The problem is that we compare ourselves to these people. And if we don't learn as fast as they do, we think that we are not talented. I want to ask you for one thing. Please do not compare yourself to these super talented people. Yes, they are lucky and they have an advantage, but you can be lucky too, and you are super talented at doing other things. Maybe you are more talented than others when you learn to sing, swim, play tennis, count numbers, cook, or repair cars. People are not all the same, that is the beauty of this world. Now you can believe that you are also talented, maybe not super talented, but talented. When you believe that you are talented, learning English will be easier for you. These words from our teacher are very helpful for us. I know that I am talented at playing football and tennis. Now I know that I am also talented at learning English. It is great. What is also great is that there is a school party in the evening. I really look forward to this party. I know that some girls from our class are going there. I hope that our new student Sophia is also going to the party. I know Sophia for only one day, but I like her a lot. Lesson 16, How to Speak Fluently. On Monday, I go to school again. Our teacher asks us how the Friday school party was. One student says that the party was great, we had a lot of drinks and a lot of fun. The girls from our class enjoyed the party as well. I enjoyed the party a lot because Sophia was there. I could talk to her, and we danced together. It was all very nice. There were also 2 boys from my football team at the party. These boys were from Brazil, and their English was simple, They could speak only in short sentences, but they were extremely funny. At the party, they made a lot of jokes about life in England, about other players from our team, and about girls from their class. Everybody laughed. Their sentences were very short, with only 3 or 4 words, but they were able to speak fluently. When we speak about the party, I tell my teacher it was really interesting to see that somebody who doesn't know many words can already speak fluently. I know some students who are at a much higher level and have a hard time speaking, my teacher says. This is really interesting. I can tell you that the 2 boys from your football team showed you what all students should do. The boys used what they knew. They cared only about what was really important, communication. Then one girl asks, "So what should we do if we want to speak English fluently? Should we go to parties and make jokes?" My teacher says, "First, let me explain what fluent speaking is." Many students think that fluent speaking is fast speaking with a lot of words and perfect grammar, but there is a better, more correct definition of fluent speaking. Fluent speaking is speaking without long pauses. Some people can do it at 1,000 words, some people can do it at 2,000 words, but there are also people who know 3,000 words and aren't able to speak fluently. If you want to speak fluently, you have to practice speaking. There is no other way to improve your fluency. Speaking is a physical activity. It is like playing a musical instrument. If you want to play a violin, you need to train the connection between your brain and the muscles in your fingers. When you want to speak well, you need to train the connection between your brain and the muscles in your mouth. If the connection between your brain and your mouth is not often trained, you can't speak fluently, no matter how many words you know. You can't complain that you can't speak fluently if you don't practice speaking often. You can have this experience. You meet a foreigner who wants to speak with you in English. You want to say ideas that are in your head, but you aren't able to do it. You can't find the right words. Then, when you end the conversation and replay it in your head, you realize that you actually knew the right words, but the conversation is already finished. Why do you experience such situations? Because you have little training. Your speaking isn't automatic. It is not automatic because you don't practice it often enough. When you want to speak fluently, I recommend speaking for at least 30 minutes a day. You can speak to a real person, or if you don't have a real person to speak to, you can do thinking aloud. It is necessary to really think aloud and not only think in your head. You need to practice the connection between your brain and your muscles. You can do this by thinking aloud. Does it make sense? Yes, says the girl. In the next lesson, one of the students asks an interesting question. She says, "Next week, I am going home. I would like to continue studying in my country. I don't know how to choose a good school. Could you help me? How do I know if the school is good or not?" My teacher says, "This is a very good question. I believe that when you read, listen, and speak a lot, you don't have to go to a school, you will learn English naturally by using it. But if you want to pay for your education, a good teacher can help you speed up the process of learning. After 5 lessons at the new school, do the test again, and you can see how many new words you've learned. If you are happy with your progress, you can continue paying for your lessons. It is also important that you enjoy every lesson and look forward to the next one. It is important to enjoy every activity you do with English. This is great news for me. I didn't know that it was possible to have a private lesson with my teacher. Soon, I am also going back to my country, and I want to have private lessons with my teacher." Lesson 18, What to do when you need help. It is Wednesday, and I go to school again. At the beginning of the next lesson, Monica has a question for my teacher. She asks her, "How do you know all of this? Where did you learn information about studying languages?" Our teacher says, there are many ways to get knowledge on how to learn and teach languages. The first one is experience. I have been teaching for more than 7 years. I have many years of experience. When I teach you, I observe what works and what doesn't, and then I use only the things that help. I also study materials about learning languages on the internet. When I find something interesting, I test it in one of my classes. If it works, I use it in all other classes. There is also another way I get information, and it usually happens during moments when I have a question but can't find an answer. During these moments, I go and visit my magic park, and I get the answer there. Monica tells my teacher, "This is interesting. How do you get the answers in the magic park? Where is the magic park? Can we go there too?" My teacher says, "What I'm going to tell you is not real to everybody. If it sounds crazy, I'm sorry, but you asked for it, so I'm giving you the answer. I believe that if you have a question and ask the universe for an answer, the answer comes. When I have a question, I go to the magic park. I sit on a bench, relax my body, slow down my breathing, and try to free my mind. Then I ask the question. Sometimes the answer comes as a new idea in my head. Sometimes somebody I speak to later tells me something that helps me get the answer. Sometimes I watch an interesting video on the internet and find the answer there. Sometimes the answers come the next day in the morning when I wake up. What's interesting is the fact that the answers keep coming, and I am so grateful for them. As I said, you don't have to believe what I'm telling you, but this is what I do, and how it works for me. The park is not very far from here, it's a 10-minute walk. A lot of people go to the park to relax. It's beautiful and has a very nice atmosphere. I call it a magic park because it's magical for me. My teacher's words are very interesting to me. I didn't know that people can ask the universe for answers. Maybe in the future, when I have an interesting question, I can go to the park and also ask for an answer. Lesson 19, Summary. The next day, one girl asks our teacher an interesting question. She says, "Thank you for the information you are giving us on how to learn English. Could you give us a summary with some rules on what we can do every day to learn English well?" Our teacher says, "Okay, I will try to give you a simple summary. If you want to speak English well, you need to do 3 things. You have to read, listen, and speak. You already know that. What's important is that you do all these 3 activities for about the same amount of time. If you leave one out, your progress will not be as fast as it could be. From my experience, I can say that it's important to use English every day for at least 90 minutes. You don't have to study, but you should use English actively. Now I will explain each activity in more detail. Let's start with reading. You should read for at least 30 minutes every day. That's the minimum. Don't read to study English, read to get some new information or enjoy an interesting story. I know I repeat this information again and again, but it's really important. Then, you should listen to English for at least 30 minutes every day. Again, it should be something you're interested in. You should enjoy getting the information. You should start with simple audiobooks or news first, then gradually move to a higher level of books and news. When you know 2,000 words, you should start watching films and videos on the internet. Then there's speaking. You already know how important it is to speak when you study English. Again, it's important to speak for at least 30 minutes every day. Of course, the best way is to speak to real people. It can be your teacher, classmates, colleagues, or friends. Try to find somebody who is at your level of English or a little bit better and speak with this person. However, if you have nobody to speak to, shadowing and thinking aloud can also provide a lot of speaking practice every day. I use these techniques very often when I learn Spanish. I don't have any native Spanish speakers in my life whom I would meet every day, so I use these two techniques to improve my Spanish. As you can see, studying English is simple. All you have to do is read, listen, and speak. This is all. Now you know how to do it. Thank you, says the girl. This is what I needed to hear. You are the best. I am also very glad that the girl asked this question. It's my last day at school, and I needed some kind of summary on what I can do. During the 4 weeks I've spent with my teacher, I've learned a lot, and my English has improved very much. My teacher knows that this is my last day at school, and she asks me if I want to say something to the other students in the class. I say that I was very happy to be a part of this class and met a lot of nice people. I give everybody my email address and tell them that they can contact me if they want to. Then I say goodbye to everybody. I'm a little sad, but I know that I have to continue with my life. I can't be at school forever. Now, it's up to me to improve my English. I have all the tools I need. Now, it's 1 year after my last day at school. I used English every day and applied the techniques from my teacher. Now, I know 4,000 words in English. It's great. I also have a new job. I start to teach English to beginners, who know only 500 words. It's good for me because I know that I need a lot of practice as a teacher before I can teach at higher levels. I have one great advantage in my new job. I had a great teacher in London, and I learned a lot from her. Now, I'm trying to give all I learned from my teacher to my students. I want them to be successful as well. Thanks for watching.